Testing. T, T, T.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, higher. 1, 2. Perfect, thank you. Molweni, good afternoon, goeiemiddag, assalamu alaikum. My name is Yusra Ehrenreich, and I head up the Advocacy and Social Justice Unit at the Center for Early Childhood Development. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our election debate, where we get to discuss political party promises for the young children in our country. To get the housekeeping out the way, please note that toilets can be accessed through the foyer, which is at the back of the hall. In case of an emergency, please do not panic. The emergency exits are to my left and right. And please note that this event is being live streamed and recorded, so there are media and photographers present. If you are uncomfortable with your photograph being taken, do feel free to let the photographer taking your photo know that. Right, let's get to it. As we approach this highly contested 2024 election in about 3 weeks' time, we have had many political party debates about the South African economy, the high levels of unemployment, crime, corruption, and many other important issues. But what we are missing from this conversation is exactly what will political parties do for the youngest citizens in South Africa. the children who are the most vulnerable and who do not get to vote. And that is why we are here today. The reality is, the early childhood development sector is in crisis. Millions of families are living in extreme poverty. They are unable to put food on their table, to keep their children safe from social ills, can't afford to send their children to quality ECD programs, and therefore, many South Africans rely on public services delivered by government, yet the government is not doing what they should be doing. So South Africa mainly depends on an informal ECD sector to provide this critical service. We have over 198,000 ECD workers and staff members in early learning programs across South Africa, many of whom are women working incredibly long hours, opening up their centers as early as 5:30 in the morning till far after 8 p.m. at night, earning less than minimum wage, sometimes no money at all, to keep children safe, to feed them, to educate them, to stimulate them, while their parents have to go to work. This is done with very little government support in terms of funding, and government continues to implement laws and rules that punish the ECD sector instead of support them. To give you one example, an ECD center or preschool in an impoverished area taking care of 80 children in the surrounding neighborhood has to pay their municipality a once-off development charge of over 195,000 rand. This is for additional pressure that they are supposedly putting on the municipality's infrastructure, such as roads, transport, sewage, water, yet most of the children and the teachers walk to the center, and they live next door. So whether they flush a toilet next door or at the ECD center, it's in the same catchment area, so where is this additional pressure? The highest development charge that we have come across is 867,000 rand for one ECD center. And this is what municipalities are requiring centers to pay in order to get registered and ultimately access government funding of only 17 rand per child per day. The insult. This 17 rand, which government is giving impoverished centers, must be split up. 40%, which is 6 rand 80, must be used to feed the child. 40%, which is 6 rand 80 per day, must be used to pay the staff member. And the remaining 20%, 3 rand 40 a day, must be spent on resources and stimulation materials. The South African government has not increased the 17 rand per child per day in 6 years, which means in real terms, it is worth much less today. Government should be ashamed. We should be ashamed that our government spends less than 2% on the national budget on our children in this country. It's a disgrace. The ECD sector, the issues are children's issues. Children are born with rights. Their rights are being violated. ECD is a women's issue. The majority of the ECD workforce are women who are overworked, underpaid, undervalued. ECD is an economic issue. We know that ensuring quality ECD provision to the poor is a crucial mechanism to break the cycle of poverty and ensure a just and equal society. ECD is a social justice issue. We can no longer accept crumbs for our children and pretend it is a meal. The political leadership in South Africa need to start acting like there is an ECD crisis. We often hear that children are the future, but they exist in the present. Their rights are in the present, their struggles are in the present, and so we need to act in the present. We need to act now. And that is why we are hosting this debate. So if I could please welcome two very special guests onto the stage so that we can be aware that ultimately this conversation is around children.
My name is Kira Caniston and I live in Claremont. I just want to say I hope you know that your decisions and actions affect me. I hope you know every choice you make affects millions of children just like me. I stand here to remind you that the statistics about children that you hear and talk about are not just statistics. They represent children just like me. Yet we cannot vote and don't have. We are the citizens of South Africa that will be most impacted by your decisions. Yet we cannot vote and don't have lots of opportunities to raise your voice and say, your voices. But I stand here to raise my voice and say, we are the future and the present. We need government to put us first.
My name is Usungqobeleng Ohla and I live in Nyanga. My question is for all the representatives on the stage. Even as a young child, I know not all children have the same early childhood experience. Some children live in nice homes and go to nice preschools, and other children live in poverty. Actually, over 50% of children in South Africa live below the poverty line. I have been told that ECD lays the foundation for success. If your party wins, what are you going to do to make sure that all young children have the best ECD opportunities no matter where they come from?
Before I hand over to the political parties, I just have one announcement to make. There is a white bakkie with the registration number CY151601, and the alarm is currently going off. So if it's your car, your alarm's going off. Thank you so much for your bravery and your honesty. Let us hear what political parties have to say, and I'm going to hand over to journalist, broadcaster, and host of The Breakfast Show, Lester Kiewit.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for braving this Cape Town weather. I'm sure the political party posters can't wait till the 29th of May because they're getting absolutely soaked. Some political parties have paid a little bit more for their posters. Other political parties have paid a little less. But 21 days to go till we go to our polls. Thank you so much for joining us. Last night, as I was preparing for this debate, I was stunned into humility because I got to evaluate the privilege that I offer my children. I soon realized that for my one child, 2 years old, his ECD, his daycare fees, is 3 times more than what 64% of children, their families bring home every month. And I was stunned to humility that I got up and I said to my wife, we have to count our blessings because I'm a middle-class South African. I accept the privilege that I enjoy, and I realize I can buy out of a state system. I can buy out of public health care. I choose not to, but I could buy out of a public education system. And most importantly, I can buy out of policing because I have a private security who's there at the press of a button. So I realize and I accept my privilege. But this election is about the 62 million South Africans, but also the millions of children, particularly 7 million children below the age of 6 years old. That is the young child population in South Africa. They say that elections are not about the present, they're about the future. You vote for your children. So we are going to be interrogating the political parties here, not on their stump speeches, not on their slogans, not at the zingers that they plan for each other, but on what their policy says about early childhood development. So we have our political parties here. Let me introduce Musi Maimane from Bold One, South Africa. Zinadi Dyanti from the Economic Freedom Fighters. Angela Sobi from Action SA. Cameron Dugmore from the ANC. Fumakile Boy from the MK Party. Eloise Denner from the Freedom Front Plus. Louise van Rijn from Rise Mzansi. Gillian Bosman from the Democratic Alliance. And Marie Sukkers from the ACDP. There are, of course, 52 political parties that are contesting on the national ballot in this year's election. Unfortunately, there is no stage big enough for 52 parties. There's also not enough time in the world for when politicians speak. So how I've been asked to clarify how this panel was selected. It is the majority of parties who are already represented in the National Assembly, as well as those political parties that are trending on the polls. But this is how this debate will be conducted. I will ask each of our panelists to deliver an opening remark between 90 seconds, which is a minute and a half, to the absolute maximum of 2 minutes. After that, we will have some prepared questions, which we'll choose randomly from the bowl. I will then ask some questions, and most importantly, those of you here, the ECD teachers, the parents, to ask the questions directly to these political parties. So let's get underway with Bold One, South Africa's Musi Maimane. Can I just clarify? You may sit here. Let me just show you what the bell, the indicator that your time is running up. Could our timekeeper ring at 90 seconds, please? Could our timekeeper ring on 115 seconds, please? Could our timekeeper run on 120 seconds, 2 minutes? Constantly until they stop talking, and those are the rules. We ask you for your respect as well. We ask our political party representatives to respect each other. If you don't like what someone is saying, don't boo, go vote, is the slogan. So let's start off this debate with 90 seconds of Musi Maimane. Do you not want to start, Musi? You might closest to the... No, we'll pass you the mic. So Musi, your 90 seconds, what is the offering of Bold One South Africa?
Sanbonan Dumelang Molweni. Firstly, I don't think any of us can deny the critical nature of this sector. I want you to imagine the first 1,000 days of a child's life and think about it this way. Firstly, from a policy point of view, we've already spoken extensively about increasing the maternal grant so that it begins when a child is in utero. In all fairness, the development of every child happens when the mother is still pregnant. The reality of it is that when you travel all across the country and you meet young people who are born malnourished, you discover very quickly that it reduces, almost halves their economic potential. So the first thing is to increase the maternal grant. The second thing is to, in focusing on those first 1,000 days, ensure, of course, naturally, that they are effective ECD centers. The dilemma and the limitation here is the fact that the government has only allocated just under 2 billion rands towards the funding of this sector. And as BOSA, I think as a country we need to come to terms with this reality. Only 12% of our population, between 12 to 14% of our population, will end up at higher education. So us making free higher education an only priority and ignoring the fact that 100% of our population needs to start at ECD centers is a crime. So let's increase the funding for ECD centers to ensure that they can operate effectively. Given that funding means that government, particularly at provincial level, needs to partner much more effectively with the maintenance, the regulation of how those centers work, so that we're clear that the allocations can partner with communities so we can develop. No one can deny that it's an employment opportunity for many women in communities. And lastly, and most crucially, I genuinely believe if we're going to fix the center, we have to ensure that nutritionally we can feed every child so that no child grows up hungry and we can achieve the economic potential of each of the children in our country. Thank you very much.
Let's now get the opening remarks of Zinade Dyanti from the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Thank you so much, Lester, and thank you so much for having us. But perhaps first I should clarify just one thing. As the EFF, we cannot be associated with insignificant historical overused slogans such as making promises to the children, because in the EFF we do not make promises, we make commitments. And therefore I would like to greet the audience, I would like to greet the panel here, and all the children of the poor that are here. And the EFF exists to protect and to restore the dignity and safeguard the rights of these children. And this is because we know and understand that young children make up 10% of our population. And of that 10%, 2% in 2022 received early learning and nutrition. And I'm saying this because I don't want to go back into the history and or go and pull back the stats of the DA in this province from the 15 years that they have been in government. God forbid that I do not have to do that. But my point is that children do not get nutrition. And this is because in this province, the Department of Basic Education, along with the DA, does not recognize or prioritize ECD centers as centers of learning. And the majority of these centers exist in poor communities of Mitchell's Plain, Langa, Nyanga, all over the Cape Flats, where the DA only goes to demolish the homes of these children. This is why the EFF is saying, expropriate the land without compensation. This is why under the EFF government, children are going to go to school for free, and teachers are going to be trained, and teachers are going to be paid a minimum wage, which the DA currently wants to scrape off. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zinadi. Let's have Angela Sobey of Action SA.
Good afternoon, everyone. The early childhood development sector had to stand up during COVID. At a time where people were being forced to close the centers. And those are the centers that stood up to support their communities. During this time, early childhood development centers were being harshly persecuted by the same government that is in power. That does not support early childhood development, because by giving registered early childhood development centers 17 Rand a day versus giving prisoners 400 Rand per prisoner per day is an absolute insult to then come back and say, please come and give us another chance in government. As Action SA, we want to ensure that we work with civil society, that we work with ECD centers, because during these times, when you look at the ECD centers, the barriers to entry are so high in terms of just meeting those requirements so that you even qualify for that. But you are also the same people that take in children in your communities, whether the parents can pay or not. You are the ones that are making the sacrifices, many of you staying at the center so that you are available at 5 or 5:30 in the morning to enable parents. You do not put children out on the street when they cannot pay. And by the same token, you are the same ones that expand that care to members of the community by running soup kitchens and so on. So when it comes to early childhood development, it's important not just to look at centers, but also to look at children that fall outside those centers, and to provide a holistic solution to society to ensure that we tackle all the social economic factors to support communities so that ECD centers are able to function better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadi. Let's go to the ANC's Cameron Dugmore.
Thank you. Omnye ufundise ngamnye. Each one, teach one. ECD is a social development issue, and in the ANC's manifesto, we cover that in the section dealing with investing in our people. And I want to start by paying tribute to one of the people who have done a huge amount of work in building early childhood development in this province. She has passed on. Her name was Jenny Rickards from the Grassroots Education Trust. And what she taught all of us was to say that we need to talk about educare, both the education of our children and the caring of our children. Now, to achieve what we want, let's be honest, we don't have high quality early childhood development at the moment. We have early childhood development, but it's not high quality. And that has a lot to do with how much we're supporting, training, and paying our early childhood practitioners. But one thing which I think is going to help, that when the Bella Bill, the Basic Education Laws Amendments Bill, gets passed. Can you give me more time? Can you give me more time, please, Lester?
You are restricted to your 90 seconds, Cameron. Please continue.
They're making a noise.
Please continue, Cameron. You have 90 seconds.
No, I'm asking for more time.
We will make it up as we go along.
And for a rule that if parties howl other speakers, that they should be asked to leave. This is a serious debate.
I ask Cameron to continue, and please respect for our speakers.
What I'm saying is that this is a poverty issue, it's a gender issue, it's a class issue. We have at the moment 42,420 educare centers, 1.7 million children. But with the Bella Bill, what will become compulsory, which is not compulsory now, is grade R. Grade R is not compulsory, but what the Bella Bill wants to do is to make it compulsory so that once we have an extra year, then the 3 to 5 year olds, in terms of the facilities that are there, are going to lay a basis. We've achieved a lot.
Thank you, Cameron Dugmore. That is your opening remarks. Cameron Dugmore, that is your opening remarks. We will continue. Ladies and gentlemen, just want to check. Can you hear our panelists on stage? Yes, panelists, can you hear your fellow panelists? Okay, we'll work on the sound so that our panelists can hear themselves. So we'll continue. Fumakile Boy of the MK Party, your 90 seconds. Technical delays will be incorporated into time, or not be incorporated into time.
Oh, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry, my leader. I'm a very disciplined child, born from disciplined parents. I don't speak to audience when I'm sitting. I prefer to stand up, always. I'm Fumanekile Boy, generally known as Feti, a former soldier from Kondo Wesizwe who liberated this country. Why? Let me first say that I thank my mom and dad to give me the best education and health. A lovely childhood. Let me thank my grandmother of teaching me Ubuntu. I think that is the essence of human. That is the essence of building a child. If you don't understand a value of a child, then you don't understand the value of a human being. Neither is a child expense comparable to any money. But its expense of a child, it has value. When we talk about early childhood, where do we start? Where do we stop? It starts when that woman conceive and say, I'm pregnant, then the government should start there to look after a child. Not when the child is born, not when the child is sent to a crèche or to whoever, but look at the child when she is conceived.
Mr. Boy,
Thank
your
you.
time is up. Thank you very much. Up next, we're opening remarks. Heloise Denner from the Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you, Lester, and thank you to everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining into this very important conversation. Let me start by saying I don't think, and I'm thinking of the theme of this debate today, political parties' promises to young children. I don't think any of us here should be making promises to children. We should have plans. We should have concrete, well thought out plans. Especially not the ruling party should not be making promises. I think the worst thing you can do is to make a promise to a child and then break it. Because we all know our ECDs are undercapacitated, underfunded, and under-resourced. And we have people working in our ECDs that work from sunrise to sundown or sunset, who is overworked and underpaid, and we simply cannot continue like that. We need concrete plans on the table and a holistic approach that looks at education, social development where ECDs currently reside, at healthcare, at crime prevention, and everything that has an influence on the lives of young children in South Africa. The Freedom Front Plus has a concrete plan, a workable, logic, well thought out plan that has a holistic approach and that looks into the holistic world that touches and influences the child and especially young children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. Louise, are you satisfied with the sound in the auditorium? Are you satisfied with the sound?
Can you hear the sound? Can you hear properly? So we can't hear on the stage.
Okay, so we'll
'cause I
get
think
our sound engineers to facilitate that. But Louise van Rijn of Rise Mzansi, your 90 seconds.
I just want to start by acknowledging the amazing women in this room. You are the leaders that this country need. And we at Rise Mzansi commit to acknowledge you as leaders, to pay you properly, and make sure that the children in your care benefit from you getting the support that you need. So we will increase the daily allowance from 17 Rand to 50 at the first possible opportunity we can. That is not just a promise, that is a commitment. Because how dare we keep this 17 Rand for 6 years with no increase? We are committed to ensuring that mothers get a maternal grant from the 12th week of pregnancy so that they can make sure that their children are well fed. And by the time they go to, oh, that's much better. By the time they go to school, they won't be sitting with the stunting issues that we have at the moment, so they will have been given the required nutrition. And then when they get to the ECD centers, ECD practitioners will be acknowledged as leaders, supported as leaders, encouraged, equipped. Our centers will be well funded because this is the children in your care is the future of this country. And if we don't invest in them today, our future will be not as bright as it should be.
Thank you very much, Louise. Up next, Gillian Bosman of the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you very much, Lester, and good afternoon to everybody here. My name is Gillian Bosman. I'm former chairperson of the Standing Committee on Social Development in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. So I know this sector very well, and I know the challenges in the sector. And as a representative of a political party in government, we recognize the critical importance that early childhood development plays in investing in young children. We understand the failures of national government at DSD level to be able to adequately provide for ECD in not just the Western Cape, but across the country. As a political party in government, we not only have clear plans in place through the ECD task team that's currently in place, and I think the Center for Early Childhood Development is currently working with the City of Cape Town on some of those issues that were highlighted earlier around the abolishment of administrative penalties, around making access available. Because what's most important, and I think as a product of an Early Childhood Development Center and as a child of the Cape Flats, I can tell you what's most important is making sure that our children receive the proper duty of care. As a political party, our manifesto promises a whole of society approach with a cradle to the grave approach, where we look at young people at an early age in a holistic sense, and ECD centers cannot be a social development issue alone. It is an issue very much embedded in education, because quality education for every child in every classroom is not about what happens at the ECD center. It also happens with what we put in and support for parents. So I'm very open to the conversation, and I'm looking forward to hear some of your ideas, because for too long, the ECD sector and the practitioners have been ignored.
Thank you, Gillian. And then finally, for this round of opening statements, Marie Circus of the ACDP.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is a privilege to speak to you today. One of the biggest reasons is, for the last 3 years of this term, we have worked in communities, and it is people like yourself that has opened our eyes to see the true state of the failing of politics, government, and social networks, what it means for children. And so as I come to you today, I am very grateful that we have made that the Center for Early Childhood Development has made this an election issue. What Jocelyn Smith has done in Saldanha Bay is show us what the crisis looks like in our country. And we as political parties have a moral obligation to not do only policy speak with you, but to really address the issues that are on the ground. Now, let me say two things. The ECD sector has huge opportunity, but it faces astronomical risks as well. The opportunity for women to uplift themselves by developing enterprise through opening an ECD center and managing a business for herself is within the sector. The opportunity for children to be safer in our communities and to have a better chance at learning and develop into well-balanced adults is within the sector. The risk we face is a government that is under-resourced and underfunded the sector, and a government that now will become competition to the sector. Therefore, the ACDP has objected and still rejects the ballot bill.
Thank you very much, Marie Circus. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That has been our opening statements. I remind you, don't boo, vote on the 29th of May. Thank you so much for our political parties for the opening statements. What we're going to do next, randomized questions chosen randomly from our bowl. We're trying to make this as equal and fair as possible. So for this round, I will walk up to our bowl. I'll choose one from this and one from this. And this question is to Louise from Rise Mzansi. And the question is, feels a little bit like Miss Universe. What is your understanding of early childhood development, Louise? 90 seconds for each answer. Is there another microphone? Thank you.
Early childhood development encompasses the well-being of the child, the learning that happens through primarily play, carefully structured and designed playful experiences for children in social settings with a loving caregiver who knows that the future of that child depends on what happens in that room every day. And so it's for children to be safe, cared for, and have opportunities to play with other children and to learn through playing.
Thank you very much, Louise. These will be different questions. Yes, I will stand there. To Musi Maimani, the question is, in South Africa, only about 27% of children aged from birth to 5 are enrolled in an early learning program. 57% of children aged 4 to 5 are failing to thrive by 5. What is your understanding of ECD beyond ECD center enrollment? And also, do you understand the current landscape of ECD in South Africa? Could you quote statistics, different ECD programs, and also the role of parents?
No, thank you very much. And I think that's the first. I want to highlight this one particular issue. I think half of the failure of our ability to interact with children in this particular sector is fundamentally because we've relegated the Office of the Rights of Children to the periphery, put it under a ministry, and underfunded it. My immediate proposal is that we need an Office of the Rights of Children inside the presidency so that it is prioritized in funding and prioritized in programming. The second thing that we've got to prioritize is that whilst I accept the rollout of centers, of ECD centers, no one can deny the fact that the absence of economic activity in communities where parents are walking away from their kids and leaving them behind impacts those children's ability to stay in the system for a long period of time, and also questions of malnutrition impact the fact that those kids don't often get fed within the centers. I would like to propose, that's why when we make the point, a job in every home, it's also a job closer to home, so that mothers and fathers are closer to home to their kids. They can interact with the sector so that you stabilize communities. If you fail to do that, violence is enacted against children because they end up at home alone with no adult supervising the sector. So we need a partnership between parents, the state, and ECD centers. And then lastly, let us do everything we can for the entrepreneur who's running an ECD center. Let's get behind them so we can train them, support them, fund them so that they're sustainable.
Thank you, Musi. This next question is for Cameron Dugmore of the ANC. And the question is, Rise Mzansi and Bosa, oh no, excuse me, your election, this can't be for Cameron because this is party specific, so I will choose another question. Cameron, what budget allocation or funding mechanisms does your party propose to allocate towards young children? The ECD subsidy of 17 Rand per child per day has not increased in 6 years, and it has actually decreased in real terms. Do you plan on increasing the subsidy, and if so, to what level?
Thank you very much. As I said in the beginning, the issue of ECD is a social development issue and an education issue. And part of that is our decision and our policy as the ANC to move towards a basic income grant. We don't have that grant at the moment. We have other child support grants and various other social development grants, but we are in support and we need to move to a social, to the issue of a basic income grant, which would help. When it comes to the facilities themselves, clearly we all know that the function of ECD only came to education in 2022. And the advantage of that now is that in regard to supporting early childhood development centers, we have a situation where we need to fund. What is the funding that is needed? It's to pay our practitioners, it is to feed our children, and also to make sure that the local governments, who are mandated by the Constitution actually provide those facilities? So the answer is yes, and I'd like to give you the stat. In this financial year, there's going to be funding for an extra 54,000 children in our ECD facilities, and then 25, 26, an extra 120,000. But all the speakers would agree that the subsidy must be increased. But I also want to say that when we talk about 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3 to 5, that has got to lead up to what is compulsory grade R. And many of these political parties do not support the Bella Bill. And that will be a revolutionary step in this country if grade R becomes compulsory, because then we move down to 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, because eventually if you want quality early childhood development, you have to actually institutionalize it so the teachers there are actually at the end employed by the state. But we cannot say that will happen tomorrow, but it is where we are going
Cameron Dugmore, thank you so much. The next question is to the EFF. The prevalence of violence against children in South Africa is alarmingly high, with around 1 in 3 children experiencing some form of abuse or neglect. What concrete steps does your political party intend to protect young children from violence and ensure their safety and well-being?
Thank you so much for that question again, Lester. The EFF plans to have police that are on patrol at all or in all the densely populated townships for situations like this. It is not true that the political parties, that we don't prioritize ECDs or education. The EFF has been advocating for free education, and when we say this, we mean that free education from ECD level all the way up until higher education. Thank you so much.
Zinade, the question is primarily about safety. What will you do to keep children safe?
I think I answered that
Have
because
you
I
answered
said
the
that
question?
because the problem of because this problem is happening in the townships, most especially the numbers of GBV are high there, right? So I am saying that looking at also the children that go missing, the EFF is planning on having police surveillance at the townships where these problems of children that go missing to keep the children safe and the GBVs happen mostly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Zinade. The next question is to the Freedom Front Plus. Heloise, what initiatives will your party implement to promote parental engagement in ECD? The Democratic Alliance already mentions involving parents to address poor quality teaching. What will you address to promote parental engagement in ECD?
Thank you, Lester. I think what the Bella Bill does is exactly the opposite. It takes away parental engagement in education. It takes away the decision-making powers from parents, from school governing bodies, and gives it to government. And we've seen what's happened where government makes decisions for us. I mean, we have 30 years of evidence about that. So first of all, we have to say no to the Bella Bill. We say no to the Bella Bill. And secondly, I think mother tongue education, Lester, is something that we should all be looking into, something that is undervalued and misunderstood. Our children learn better if they learn in the language of their heart, if they learn in the language of their mother. And if we involve our communities and our parents in decision making, then we should also look into mother tongue language education, and that is also what the Bella Bill does. It takes away our decision powers regarding mother tongue education as well.
Thank you very much. To the Democratic Alliance. Gillian, the ANC plans to guarantee universal access to high-quality early childhood development by 2030. And this is promised in numerous government ECD policies, including the National Development Plan. What is the Democratic Alliance's counter plan to guarantee universal access to high-quality early childhood development? What are your alternatives?
Thank you very much, Lester. I don't know why you're running away from me. I think we need to be very clear in understanding that the ANC has made a lot of promises over the years, and the ANC has failed to deliver. What we have shown in the Western Cape and in the other municipalities that we govern across the country is that the expansion of early childhood development programs is not a budgetary problem. The South African government has lots of money. It's about how you prioritize money. And you asked, what is it that we will do in terms of funding the ECD sector? I think, Lester, the first thing is not just looking at funding the ECD sector on its own. A budget for early childhood development can't be relegated to a department in the presidency, or it can't be relegated to one unit. It needs to be cut across all levels of government, because the early childhood development sector has responsibilities from local government in terms of municipalities, in terms of development charges, in terms of planning. We've shown already in the city of Cape Town through the ECD task team that we are looking at ways of waiving or abolishing some of those charges. We're looking at how do we enable and teach early childhood development practitioners better. That is both a local government funding mechanism, a provincial funding mechanism, and a national funding mechanism. One of the things we've said in the last 5 years in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament through our budget committee is that we want to see the spreadsheet that outlines the equitable share from national government. We want to see how much government values every single child in the Western Cape. And when you look at the mechanisms that's already in place in this province, we're the only province that has a watchdog in place to look after the interests of children. We've already funded a commissioner for children. And the first question I asked is, where are the other provinces and where is national DSD? And what happened to all that money that the ECD practitioners were supposed to get post-COVID?
Thank you, Gillian. This question to the ACDP. Tamari. What are your thoughts on certain political parties who plan to expel undocumented foreign nationals and criminalize those who re-enter the country illegally? What implications do you think this has on families? What about children who are born in South Africa? How do you think this will be affected, and how do you plan to address this? Murray.
I think there's a judgment that has already been made on undocumented learners, and that we need to accommodate children that are undocumented, and we need to just look at the reality in South Africa today. In my constituency, I have a woman married to a foreign national, and that person has been struggling for the last 10 years to get her husband documented in South Africa. We have families that are integrated, and our systems are not allowing people to, one, get documented in order for them to get employment and be functional in our economy, and secondly, for them to then act to protect their children. In this case, we had somebody that is undocumented, cannot work, and a family that is severely disadvantaged economically because of that. What do? We need to become functional in our addressing the issues of getting people legal in South Africa, depending on what their status is. We cannot violate the rights of children to safety. It doesn't matter who that child is. And we are bound by international and under the African Charter to protect family. And the ACDP would be doing that.
Thank you very much, Marie. Next question is to the MK Party. For Makile, the EFF, ACDP, and Freedom Front Plus each mention some aspects of the Bella Bill in their manifestos. What is the MK Party's stance on the Bella Bill?
Thank you very much. Let me first say this. MK Party is knocking on the door to get into government. And I'm not here and lie about MK Party and make empty promises about what. But what I can tell you is that MK Party is clear on free and fair education, secured education, and will be, immediately when it gets into parliament, will develop a system of a bill that will enhance and secure the early childhood children. For now, we can't lie and say, because we are not in government.
Thank you very much for Makile. To Angela Sobey of Action SA. The question is, the ACDP, EFF Plus, MK Party, and Patriotic Alliance election manifestos do not mention nutrition as it relates to young children. We know that 1 in 4 South African children under 5 years old are stunted. How does the Action SA plan to address issues of malnutrition, stunting, and inadequate healthcare services to young children?
Thank you. Expanding support for early childhood development requires that we start with the Department of Social Development and the Department of Health. Because when you talk about early childhood development, you are talking about the child from in utero to the first 1,000 days, going into their communities. The issue of malnutrition for children is a challenge within the broader community context. When pregnant mothers are not receiving sufficient nutrition, you end up with children's brain development being stunted. And from that early stage already, you are limiting the child's growth. So in terms of the nutritional support, early childhood development centers and early childhood development support in communities needs to be capacitated and resourced to ensure that these children are able to get something to eat. When you look at the communities that are most harshly impacted, these are communities that are characterized by poverty, by unemployment, by substance abuse, by crime, gangsterism, high rates of gender-based violence and femicide. A lot of the children that come to centers in underprivileged communities are also children that suffer with fetal alcohol syndrome. And when you look at the challenges combined, it requires a broader, comprehensive approach where it's dealt with at a socioeconomic level and that communities are capacitated to work with civil society in addressing the challenges.
Thank you, Angela. The final question will go to Rise Mzansi, Louise van Rijn. The researchers at the Center for Early Childhood Development have been going through election manifestos, and they note that Rise Mzansi does not mention how your party will provide for the social welfare needs of young people. Do you not see it as an important part of development?
Our manifesto is very clear that the well-being of family, the well-being of young people is absolutely critical. So I don't know who read through that manifesto. Everything that we do in Rise Mzansi is centered around young people and the fact that they are the future. We are here today to create the future of the young people in our care. And that's our absolute commitment. So I don't know where you picked that up in the manifesto. Our focus is on single mothers as a starting point to make sure that the mothers are able, have the resources to support and look after their children. Family well-being is a very big part of our focus, is to ensure that we deal with the issue of absent fathers and creating sufficient care and safety for the children in our communities. So, yeah, absolutely committed to the future of our young people.
Thank you, Louise van Rijn of Rise Mzansi. It's now my turn to ask our panelists what their thoughts are on various issues affecting particularly young children in South Africa. I'm going to ask Murray, Heloise, and Cameron to answer these questions. Please, Cameron, you are closest to a mic, so I'll ask you first. The Basic Education Department says its strategy for early learning projects will require 115,000 new venues to accommodate 2.9 million children between the ages of 3 and 5 by 2030. How will the ANC make this infrastructure and also operational requirements like teachers and carers a reality by 2030?
Thank you very much, Lester. As the ANC, we've emphasized the point that high quality early childhood development is where we're going to. We do not have that at the moment, and facilities is part of that. There are 907,000 children at the moment in terms of that 3 to 5 category that benefit from the subsidy. But one of the key problems, and if you look at the Constitution, I'll just give you that clause, it's Schedule 4B. There's an obligation on municipalities in terms of facilities and infrastructure. There's a clear obligation there. So we need a cooperative approach. And one of the problems that we actually have is that IDA apa in Chona Koloni, ne, bayafuna ukulwa. Hulle wil baklei met die nasionale regering, whereas it's important that we work together because the city in Cape Town should be providing land and facilities. But you know, Lester, what they are doing? The city is selling to private developers the land which could be available for ECD facilities. Bona, bayasenza lanto. The second thing is, if you talk about money, it is the DA who governs this province that does not want a minimum wage. They do not want a minimum wage, and how are parents going to support? Kufuneka bazali bayaxhasa abantwana bakho, but Lord DA ayafuna ukubatala a minimum wage. So that's what we need. We need local government to play its role in terms of facilities. I don't want to stand here. You must, for grade 6, there's 1 million children. For the year before grade 1, it's also 1 million. So imagine from 2 to 5, it's 1 million every year. That's why we need to get there, increase the subsidy, but get local governments to make facilities available, get public works to make those facilities available.
Cameron, thank you so much. Heloise Dena of the Freedom Front Plus. How do you plan to increase infrastructure, also provide more teachers and carers by 2030?
Must I answer?
Sorry, Lester, can you just repeat the question?
The Basic Education Department says its strategy for early learning projects will require 115,000 new venues to accommodate 2.9 million children by 2030. How do you make these infrastructure and operational requirements a reality?
Thank you, Lester. I think that's a very good question. First of all, we need to appoint competent contractors. After we've appointed competent contractors to build the facilities, we need to get them to stick to the building contracts and to stick to timelines and to deliver on what they are supposed to deliver on. We've seen too many tenders going to tenderpreneurs who basically just take the money and don't build the facilities. So we need those facilities to be built. We can't take money from taxpayers and promise, as the governing party has been doing, promise to children that facilities are going to be built, and then the money is gone and no facility is being built. So I think we should start with keeping people to account and look into appointing competent contractors who are able to do the jobs. Thank you.
Marie Sukas of the ACDP.
Yes, I think we should from the get-go say that government cannot contract manage. We know this. The answer in the ACDP manifesto is very clear. Let us build capable communities. Let communities become the custodians for infrastructure built. And let me very quickly address two things that I forgot to earlier. ECD formed part of the Bella Bill. The ANC took it out. It was supported in the committee. So the legislative framework for infrastructure was laid. She would have been included in that legislation. But again, the Bella Bill is not the answer for any of the problems because it does not even address ECD. And when it comes, and secondly, when it comes to ECD, we need to understand, we need to invest in enterprise development for ECD. We need to empower women, and we need to do it at a community level, not government. When you allow government to build anything, the cost is astronomical. For the fracture of what government builds, communities can build it themselves.
I ask our next question of Gillian Bosman of the Democratic Alliance, Fumakele Boy of the MK Party, as well as Angela Sobey of Action SA. More than 9 million children receive at least one basic meal a day through the National School Nutrition Program. What would your party do, if in government, to safeguard this program? Because we've already seen in the province of KZN, we've had rollback of the National School Nutrition Program. Gillian?
Lester, I think we've shown where we are in government. We've expanded the National Nutrition Program, and we've supplemented that program with Western Cape money. During COVID, you'll remember the Minister of Basic Education and the Minister of Social Development took the Western Cape government to court to stop school feeding schemes. We went to court and we defended that. We've expanded early childhood feeding. We've expanded the school nutrition program to make sure that kids who come to school, and especially kids who come from homes where there's nothing to eat, is able to come to school and get something to eat, and get something that is nutritious, where the food is made by the practitioners at school, and also that those kids are able to take something home. We all know that you cannot teach a hungry child, and part of early childhood development is that important aspect of nutrition. In this province, the Western Cape Department of Health and Wellness, the Department of Social Development, and the Department of Education work hand in glove to ensure that feeding at school happens on a regular basis, feeding at school happens consistently, and where we have partnered with the private sector, whether that's partnering with farmers, with retailers, with organizations like Gift of the Givers, we've ensured that food provision is on top of the priority and that we safeguard those budget items. Many of you will know that there was what we call a mid-year budget cut that took place last year in September, where the national government slashed budgets. But in this province, we've protected budgets earmarked for school feeding, and we've made sure that that budget can be expanded.
Fumakele Boy of the MK, what would your party do to safeguard the National School Nutrition Program if in government, Fumakele?
Thank you. And it will be in government. 2/3 majorities for sure. I'm listening, quite interesting. When over 30 years, and parties which have been in government still don't address the question correct. The question is this: you can't have an infrastructure in an unhealthy society. Our society is abnormal. You look in the township, you look in the cities, you see a difference. Now, when you address nutrition, where do you start? And how do you budget around them? A child in the township who's working every morning through dirty water, and a child in a city. Our government is saying it is going to take that all off record and build a people's government and a people's country with equality to all. Thank you.
Angela Sobey, in the age of austerity, even though our president, our Minister of Finance has not mentioned the A word, it's quite clear that we're in an age of austerity. How will Action SA save key government welfare programs like school nutrition?
When it comes to addressing challenges, social challenges like poverty and the socioeconomic challenges, it requires and starts with a political will. A government cannot work for communities without communities. They need to work with you as civil society, because civil society are the ones that are stepping up to do the jobs that government has failed to do over the years. The reason we are even having this conversation, when we are talking about nutrition programs at schools, it has been necessitated by the collapse of employment industries. People that were employed in the textile, in the fishing industries that have been sitting unemployed for many years, that has been a huge contributing factor. We should maintain the nutrition programs for children, but we should also address the issues within communities to capacitate parents to find jobs and be able to feed their children at home. We should not be creating an enabling environment where communities remain impoverished, remain unemployed. We should be working in tandem. While we maintain the nutrition program, we should also be working on getting communities employed and out of poverty so that they are able to participate and work with civil society. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela Sobey. Our next question will go to BOSA, EFF, and Rise Mzansi Musi, because you are immediately next to me. I'll ask you, according to the 2021 ECD census, there are 198 ECD staff members, 22% have no qualification, 26 attended a skills program, and 52 have a general qualification. How do you make sure you bring all ECD teachers up to being suitably qualified?
Sorry, this is not working, so let me just get one that does. My time can't start because I think the microphone was sabotaging, but let's get on to a number of key principles. I want to step back a little bit because at some level you can intervene at an ECD level and forget the broader macroeconomic situations that this country faces. The first reality is that we've got too many of our young people who start school and drop out of school. We've made it less aspirational for people to do skills-based training. So when you talk about TVET colleges, the throughput level for TVET colleges is only at 11%. So if we are going to heal the society of South Africa so that we've got a basis upon which we can begin to train ECD practitioners, my suggestion very strongly is that let's incentivize young South Africans from staying in school all the way through that. Let's capacitate TVET colleges so that the training there is effective. And thirdly, let's allow for qualifications that can come in at a training and capacitation level for ECD practitioners. And there are multiple NGOs and higher education centers that are capacitated for this. It's going to take funding. But I have to highlight this point. We often can speak in lofty ideas about how you're going to fund this and how you're going to fund that. We have a government right now at this point in time, for every 1 rand that comes into this country, much of it is spent on debt. The second part is on welfare, and the last is on government bureaucracy. Those are facts. So we can't sit here and say we're going to just allocate money from nowhere. The starting point must be we have to improve GDP growth, we have to reduce our spend on debt and stop a government that's addicted to debt, and allocate money to social spending so that we can begin to uplift our communities. We fail at that, we're in trouble. So let's train more teachers by allocating budget in that space and partnering, particularly in the TVET colleges.
Thank you. Zenadi of the EFF.
And please just repeat the question for me.
The question is that according to the 2021 ECD census, 22% of ECD teachers have no qualification, 26 have attended skills programs, and 52 do have a qualification. How would you make sure that all ECD teachers are suitably qualified?
Okay, thank you so much for that question again, Lester. So the EFF plans to train an additional 40,000 practitioners, right? And then there also a way a way that the EFF plans to do this is interlinking the departments. So if we interlink the Department of Education, of Basic Education, we interlink social development, we interlink also home affairs and housing. This way we are able to know how many birth certificates are released a year, how many children are born, what is the demand or the need for ECD centers in our communities, and also link local government as well. This way you will be able to know what is the demand of the children that need to be fed in those communities, and you will be able to also know what is the demand or the number that is needed of ECD centers in those particular communities. And this will immediately tell you how many and how much ECD practitioners to train. Thank you so much.
Nadia, thank you. Louise?
I think we have to rethink our story around what does it take to be a good ECD practitioner. And I don't agree that all the ECD practitioners necessarily need formal training. They need support. They need opportunities to be in local communities of practice with other practitioners. They need to learn from each other. They need to feel valued. They need to be acknowledged as leaders in their community. And then they will provide the kind of quality of care that we need for our children. So the starting point is to be very clear about what does successful ECD look like. And this center has been an example of the kind of support that ECD practitioners need. And it's that in-service training and in-service support, making sure that they earn a proper salary, that they want to be at work, that they are locally led by good leadership in their centers. That's where the real difference happens. I've worked with 1,900 principals of under-resourced schools around the country. And what we saw is that the most important thing in whether it is a school or an ECD center, is local leadership, local support, local communities of practice, and for people to feel valued and supported.
Thank you very much, Louise. I'll ask this question of Gillian Bosman of Heloise Denner of the Freedom Front Plus and Cameron Dugmore of the ANC. We seem to have a systemic failure in South Africa where support systems are no longer there. Parents work long shift jobs. Many children are simply dropped off at daycares without stimulation. Primary schools, we have children who are dropped off at early care, attend school, and then aftercare. Parents then get home late, meals have to be cooked, homework done. Where is the time for bonding? Describe a system that brings us here and then tell us, how do we expect to build a future with under or even overstimulated young children where there's little bonding, and in the case of infants, toddlers, the early years for emotional development? Gillian.
I think, Lester, we are all very clear that early childhood development is a whole of society approach. The most important aspect of any child's development is providing a safe, wholesome environment at home. And as much as we want to provide a space for early childhood development to happen in someone else's care, we have to build capacity amongst parents. And it's something that our manifesto is very clear on, and it's something that we are thriving to implement in government as well. You have to be able to create the type of economic opportunities that enable parents to get quality jobs, to make sure that they don't spend all their time commuting to and from work, that they have the time to spend with their children, and that you also create the types of communities where parents are able to go to a park with their kids and interact with their kids in that level. Early childhood development centers have played that role because they provide an important space of care. In our province, for instance, one of the innovations that we've introduced is a school evaluation authority. Now that ECDs are part of the basic education component, The ECD programs will be evaluated in terms of the efficacy as well. So parents will be able to see which ECD centers offer what type of programs. Through collaboration schools, we've shown that parental involvement and getting parents involved in not just what happens during the school on weekdays, but also what happens on Saturdays, parents are equipped with the skills to not just spend time with their children, but also have access to the materials that their children need. So in short, it's about providing parents with the opportunities, understanding that the resources need to be available for children, and also understanding that you have to do all the other things right to make it easier for people to spend time with their children.
Eloise Deno of the Freedom Front Plus, describe the system where we have overburdened parents, not enough time of bonding with young children, what impact that has on early development.
Thank you, Lester. This is quite a personal question for me because I serve as a member of parliament. I commute between Bloemfontein and Cape Town, and I have a 2-year-old son who's my first child, so I feel very guilty that I don't have enough time to bond with him. But a system where we would have enough time to bond with our children would be a prosperous South Africa. Now, it sounds like a pipe dream, but where we don't have to worry about crime and about poor healthcare and about poor education and about joblessness and about a poor economy, that would be a system where we would be able to go to work and come home and have time to bond with our children. But for now, we have to rely on a strong support network, and integral to that support network is ECD centers, where people take care of our children because we are unable to be with our children and to take care of them. But then those ECD centers have to be capacitated, have to be resourced, and have to have people who really care about children. And I'm sure that most ECD centers have people who care about children. ECD practitioners, being an ECD practitioner is a calling and not just a job. And I think most people who do that job see it as a calling and form part of the village that we need to raise our children in the South Africa that we currently live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Eloise. Cameron Dugmore, your response.
Thank you very much, Lester. I think it's also important when we're talking parenting and access to early childhood facilities, just to remind particularly the Freedom Front and everyone else that the reason why the Bella Bill has not dealt, the reason why the Bella Bill has not dealt with early childhood development is that there's actually a process to amend the Children's Act, which specifically is going to look at the issue of access and requirements for registration. But what I still want to repeat, because I say ECD is linked to grade R, and the fact that parties like the DA and the Freedom Front and others are opposing the Bella Bill, which will have a revolutionary thing to say it's compulsory for grade R, they are actually undermining a real step forward. But when it comes to parents, we have deep inequality and poverty in this country, and the reality is parents are working. Our manifesto talks to the issue of growing this economy, which is critically needed, but the state has to play a role. Therefore, community health workers, as Mikulu Trust has done, are going into communities and with the parents or the grandparents that are there, running education programs in terms of running reading skills. So the state, through community health workers, through social development workers, has to play that role. But ideally, every factory, every learning institution needs to have an early childhood center at the workplace, which will be closer to where the parents are. Some people want to call that socialism. The reality is that the state and business has to play that role, and we as the ANC are pushing that. The danger is some people want to privatize early childhood development, and that we cannot do. But parents, let's accept the reality and work towards a situation where, unlike in this province, where the DA took money from education and health to pay for a failed safety plan, that's why we have teachers facing problems, and and Conradi Hospital has never been opened. They took money from basic
Cameron Duckmore,
education.
that is your time. Thank you very much. Our next round of questions go to Musi Mani, Marie Sukas, and Angela Sobe. You unfortunately have to leave us, so I'll ask this question to you first, Angela. How serious is the concern of unregistered ECDs, and what will you do to regularize these enterprises?
The concern of unregistered ECDs is one that exists out of necessity. When you look at unregistered ECDs, they exist primarily in impoverished and disenfranchised areas. They exist out of a response to the communities for a need for the care of these children and early childhood development. Again, it becomes extremely important to ensure that when it comes to early childhood development, the support that we provide to early childhood development and early childhood development centers and carers, that it is a holistic approach. We cannot be having conversations in this day and age about nutrition for our children and not having a similar conversation when the prisoners don't have nutrition problems. The prisoners are the ones sitting in jail at 400 Rand per prisoner per day. While we are talking about basic nutrition, a basic right for children in order to help them to thrive. So it becomes extremely important that you have the political will to ensure that these matters are addressed. Thank you.
Angela, thanks so much. Musi?
I want to step back again because I want us to be realistic about what we are talking about and understand, let's be honest, our communities are a mess. Let's be honest about this basic fact, that for a white child in this country, the prospect of them growing up with both parents is at 70%. For a black child in this country, that prospect is at 30%. So if we need to fix our society, let's make sure our families can stay closer together and address the apartheid spatial planning that forced mothers and fathers to work away from their children rather than working closer to their children. So when we want to address this issue of registration, we also cannot deny the fact that we have destroyed local government, which is tasked constitutionally with supporting the registration of ECD centers. So invariably what happens is that you force ECD practitioners to fear partnership with government, because when they arrive, they come up with facts that are unrealistic for an ECD center. They say to them, you need like 1 toilet, 4 children, all of this sort of stuff. And the natural consequence of that is that heavy, burdensome regulation forces deregulation and for people to operate outside the law. Let us partner with local government, capacitate it, and the objective is that registration and compliance must be something we aim for, not fear, and help practitioners get there. That's what we've got to achieve.
Louise, your take at that? How do we regularize, ladies and gentlemen, don't boo, vote. Don't cheer, vote. Louise van Rijn, I have a question for you. How would you go about regularizing unregistered ECD centers? My apologies, it was Marie, the question, sorry.
Okay, the first thing, let's be clear about what the barrier is. The barrier is that we have a laborious, complicated, bureaucratic system when it comes to the registration of ECDs. And that is the main reason why people are struggling to get registered. When you look at the numbers, we've got 1.3 million children that are not in ECD at the moment. So when you look at that, you realize that we need to fast-track a plan in terms of priorities of funding, priorities of assisting ECD centers that are operating unregistered. And the way that we do that is, number one, put them on a path of development, register them, and put them on a path of development. We shouldn't keep most of the we can speak lyrical here about women empowerment. And we can speak very lyrical about black empowerment. But until you realize that it is most of the time black women that are struggling to get their businesses registered and for them to access funding, then these politicians that are sitting on the stage will do everything to apply pressure so that the bureaucrats should be retiring, that they retire so that we have less bureaucrats and we put that funding towards our ECDs. And secondly, that we take the unused infrastructure and give that infrastructure to our ECD centers in rural areas.
Marie, thank you so much. We'll have our last round of questions before we go to the audience. So if you would like to ask a question, you would make your way to the mic on either side. To Louise, I ask of you, and we spoke very much about mothers and fathers. ECD, early learning, does not have to take place in a center. Mothers and mother figures are the foundation of our communities, but fathers also have an important role to play in early childhood development. But 60% of newborns in South Africa only have one parent, usually the mother, register them. What's the impact of homes without a positive male role model, and how has this become such a crisis? What will you do about it?
Oh, it's such a wonderful question. So we know that it takes a village to raise a child. And in that village are men and women of childbearing age, and there are older people, and there are, there are many different generations. And one of the things we've done is we have all abdicated responsibility for raising the children by sending our children to schools and ECD centers. It's time for us as parents, community members, people who care about the future of our children. They are all our children, not those people's children. They are our children. And if we really take that seriously, it's time for communities to come together and say, how will we ensure that these children are cared for from early morning until late at night? Some parents are going to go to school. Some young people and older people will stay at home in communities, and they can be the care that our children need. There's an amazing program here in the Western Cape called Math Mums, where mothers are being invited to become maths teachers to young children. And we've seen what happens when those mothers are empowered and equipped and supported, and we've seen the impact of those programs in communities all over Cape Town. Imagine if we could grow that and invite fathers and grannies and grandmas to be, or granddads, to be part of the solution rather than just people who stand on the outside and look into what goes on in these communities. So it is a whole of society approach. It takes all of us, it requires all of us in communities to take responsibility for the future of our children.
Thank you, Louise. For Makila Boy of the MK Party, what do we do about the crisis of absent positive male role models, particularly for our younger children? Where are the dads? The question is that we have a crisis in South Africa where 60% of newborn children only have one parent register them, the mother. Male role models, fathers, are largely absent. What will the MK do to change society to have males and men playing a role in their children's future?
I like that question. That is a question I like, because it means that a child grew in an abnormal situation with only one parent. That is solely because of the working hours given to our people. Once we can regulate working hours, for example, I'll give you an example. An African father, he left home at 3 o'clock, come back at 11 o'clock at night. Where does the parenthood enter in that situation? It is also very important to understand that Politically, when you live and grow up in a capitalist state, that is the abnormality of capitalism. That is what we need to address, to do away. South Africa is not yet free. We need to address the question. That is why we are advocating for a normal and a free society. Economically, we are not balanced. A white person can easily say, I'm going home and sit the whole day, but an African person can't do that. Thank you.
Omakele, thanks so much. Zinadi, how do you explain the crisis of absent male role models and their role in early childhood development?
Thank you so much once again. The absence of fathers is because of the job crisis that we have in the Western Cape. When we look at problems that we have in our homes, it's very important for us to look at the roots of the problems or at the causes of the problems. So there's a job crisis in the Western Cape. Our fathers and our parents and our children are frustrated. All of us are frustrated because we are not working. Children are being expelled in schools in Melbourne, if I can make this one example. There are ECDs that are not allowing children in because they must pay a certain amount in order to enroll in those kind of centers. These children are then expelled and they go back home and they do not access these institutions. And this is also not happening, this is just not happening at ECD centers, it's also happening in high schools. This is why we have a lot of children that are in the streets joining the gangs, smoking drugs and doing drugs, a problem that the DA cannot resolve because it created that problem. And this then causes our children not to have present fathers because of the frustrations that are in our communities. Thank you so much.
Sinadia, thank you very much. It's now time for the audience to ask our political representatives a question relating to the manifesto. I think that gentleman on my right will start first, then we'll go to my left. I would suggest you direct a question to a political party. If it's a general question, we have to give all political parties here a chance to respond. If not all political parties have been asked a direct question, I will then issue a direct question. But sir, on my right-hand side, your question.
Lester, let me start be very blunt. These individuals are sitting here. Our communities on the Cape Flats, if I had to make a round figure to ask these people, how many of them has been plagued with gun and gang violence over the last 3 to 6 months, probably this whole place will stand. None of them had the dignity of the worth to be able to acknowledge hundreds of our children that has been brutalized, being killed as a consequence of gang violence on the Cape Flats. So let me get to cut through the chase here. You want to come and talk about the fact that we prioritize children while you not even acknowledge the systematic trauma that our children, parents, mothers and fathers has been subjected to over the last 30 years.
Sir, can I ask that you direct the question and ask the question, please? What is your question?
Let my question be very clear. Why is it that none of you, and I put a general question to all of them, why is it that none of you express any sympathy, any respect for the death and the dying of our children that since 2016, over 700 has been brutally killed and over 1.2 thousand has been shot across the Cape Flats? You had nothing else. Why haven't you done it?
Thank you, sir. That's a general question. Thank you very much, sir. We will have to respond and have everyone respond. Musi, will you respond first?
Thank you, sir.
You butcher me. Our people has been thrown under the bus. Our children has been traumatized.
Sir, your question has been asked. I have to control, please. Thank you very much, Musi. What is your response?
Social intervention for children on the Cape Flats, zero. Talk to me, engage me. Engage me.
Thank you so much, sir. And I'll be the first to acknowledge that in this discussion, of course, we haven't spent a lot of time speaking about security and security of our communities as it fights the issue of violence and gang violence. So your point is well taken. But I think we mustn't deny equally so the fact that, broadly speaking, as a country, we have a violence problem. And I want to highlight just a simple thought. One, I went to an ECD center recently. It's built near an illegal car repair place. No one knows who's there, the community doesn't know, and so naturally you end up with high levels of violence. Our call is simple. Let's decentralize policing and bring it down to a local level. Let's ensure that intelligence is brought down to the ground so that we know who are the violent people who are there. And let's make sure, for the purposes of ECD, this is the benefit of high LSM communities. You can allocate a police officer on quick response to each ECD center so that when there's a crisis closer to the center, you have a direct line. Ultimately, we have a shortage of a number of police in our communities where ratios in Mitchell's Plain, in Nyanga, eventually end up at 1:600. Let us rather increase it by localizing it, earning private security so that there's a closer response closer to ECD centers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Musi Zinade. The question is generally on young persons, young children's safety in South Africa, and particularly here in the Western Cape and Cape Town.
Okay, so in the EFF, we are always fighting with the DA because of. Can I just speak? Please protect me, Chairperson.
Please utilize your time, Zinade.
Please protect me. So we are always debating and arguing with the DA because of the City of Cape Town law enforcement that is not available in the areas of Mitchell's Plain and in the Cape Flats. So in the EFF, we also would like the presence or the police presence that is available in your areas of Sea Point, in your areas of waterfront, to be visible in Mitchell's Plain and Athlone and the Cape Flats entirely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Cameron Dugmore. Zinade, the mic, please.
Thank you very much. This is an ECD debate, but I think the question that the gentleman has asked is relevant. Because for many of our young people on the Cape Flats, there is a choice around being part of gangs and actually going to further education. I can tell you now that if the number of young boys that were being killed on the Cape Flats was the same as being killed in Rondebosch or Durbanville, this would have been a provincial crisis. But the reality is that this provincial government does not value the life of a colored child or a black child the same as they value a white child. So that's why your earlier question about men. The work amongst young boys is absolutely critical so that they are role models, and even if someone doesn't have a father or an uncle in the house, there are other role models. Women have been incredible role models to young men. Grandmothers have been incredible, friends. So the issue is, how do we give our young men role models? How do we explain what are the alternatives for further education? Many of our kids are leaving school at grade 9. The ANC government has got NSFAS. Any family that earns under 350,000 Rand a year, gross income, can send their child to a college or a university. The Manenbergs, the Kailiches, the Mitchell's Plain, our young boys should be in colleges. We should be motivating them. But if you don't have a caring government that is at 15 years where gangsterism has got worse, then kufuneka i-DA iyahamba apha eNtshona Koloni. Asifuni kuba i-DA iza kuba khona.
Fumakile,
Yale
boy
munovaya.
of the MK party, what's your response?
Thank you. My chief, I listened to your question. I'm actually staying there, and it's a daily issue of crime in our areas. Whether you can bring in the intelligence, the national, or what, it won't solve it because it is economical and it is racist because the infrastructures we are staying in allow our children to grow up in a crime environment. We are staying in shacks, we are staying in flats. A family of 20 stay in one flat. How do you expect that family to survive? That's why you find our children on the street. That's why you find our children on drugs. It is both the ANC and the DA government who should account for that. Thank you.
Eloise of the Freedom Front Plus, thank you. Would you mind passing the microphone to Eloise, please?
Thank you. Sir, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that you have verbalized the absolutely shocking, terrible situation where children are killed in gang violence on the flats especially. And the way that you verbalized it was felt, I'm sure, by all of my colleagues here on stage, because it's an unacceptable situation. What's also unacceptable is the death of children being politicized by my two colleagues here next to me, but let's leave that at that. There's no quick cure for this problem. It's a systemic problem that will have to be handled in different phases and facets. What I can tell you is that the Freedom Front Plus has exclusively noted the problem of gang violence on the flats in our manifesto, and I'd like to read just the summarized point for you. It says, well-coordinated cooperation between the police, local authorities, specialized units, and the NPA is needed to combat gang-related violence. That's just one point that I'd like to highlight in the manifesto, but you are right to be upset. It is an extremely serious problem which needs an extremely serious solution.
Eloise, thank you. Louise from Rise Mzansi.
Gang violence start in the absence of good ECD. When children start their lives with a good foundation because of what the women in this room offer to them, they have a much better chance to finish their education, be able to go into further education and then get a proper job. And ultimately, that is a much more attractive solution to young people than going into gangs. So we have to look at this systemically. We have to look at where do we start, and we start with ECD. We start with nutrition. We made sure that those brains are well developed and that they can learn and that children can read for meaning at the end of grade 3 and that they then have a chance to succeed in school and get a good job, and then they will not want to be in gangs. So I know that's not the answer that you want for today, but that is the long-term answer that we need to work on.
Louise, thank you. Gillian?
Thank you very much. Lester, I think as the youngest person on this panel, I want to say that gang violence on the Cape Flats is not a new phenomenon. Mr. Dugmore was the MEC for education when I was in high school. The army was in our communities in Grassy Park trying to deal with gang violence. So it's not a new problem. What we've done as the Democratic Alliance, we've reinforced policing in this province through the LEAP program. We've reinforced policing through the school safety officers, but it's a drop in the ocean for what's happening in our communities. Last week, myself and Regan Allen, the MEC for Police Oversight and Community Safety, was down the road at Silverstream Primary School, and we heard, as teachers were telling us, that you cannot ask little children in primary school level at school to lie down when the bullets are flying, because they told us when we go home, if you lie down and the gangsters come, you get a bullet at the back of your head. What we've done in this province is we've put serious measures in place, like the Child Death Review, a program that looks at bringing the National Prosecuting Authority, the Department of Health, the Department of Social Development, and the Department of Community Safety together once a month to look at the priority cases of where children are killed, not just in gang violence, but where children are murdered, where children are kidnapped, and ensuring that those cases are prioritized by moving those dockets directly from police stations to the High Court and through specialized courts to ensure that you put court watching briefs in place.
Marie, I'll have you of this round. I see plenty of people with party colors in these rows. We have invited something like 200 to 300 ECD teachers, carers. We'd like them to ask the question. So if you're in a blue t-shirt, if you're in a black t-shirt with colorful rainbow writing, please, I ask you, let's give the opportunity to the invited ECD teachers. Marie? Please, ma'am, we are running out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, we are running out of time. We're trying to get as many questions. Marie, please.
I think one of the things that we have to acknowledge here is that even though, and this is the problem that I have, it's one of my weak points actually, I'm not a very good policy speak person. But when it comes to issues that has to do, like the gentleman has voiced here, the issue around gang violence. In 2020, when Valentino Grootiki was shot in Lavender Hill, a 5-year-old boy, that is part of the reason the ACDP looked at early childhood development and gangsterism. So what have we done? I am a child that grew up on the flats. So for us, and I think for some of us here, it is not a thing that is far away, it is very real. What the ACDP has done since I came into my term of office, because I have stood at the bodies of young people. I have stood at the bodies of young people shot who has a name and who is not a stranger to me. And because of that, we have been sounding the call just as passionately as that gentleman has done today here in the halls of Parliament. We have taken the Minister of Social Development at the end of the financial year in 2020 to take her to Lavender Hill, to dialogue with our communities so that the budget will be allocated where those communities identify what the interventions are that they need. And when it comes to early childhood development, children need champions. In 2021, we ran with the theme, Child Champions, as the ACDP. Because in our communities, we want to raise public office bearers that will have the heart to champion children,
Marie,
especially the safety of children.
Each one has gotten 90 seconds and just over. I want to ask our audience to ask targeted questions, no speech. We're running up to a very, very hard 5:30 deadline because that's when the transport must leave. Don't worry, it won't leave without you. But ma'am, your targeted question, particularly to a political party, because if you ask the general question, we have to have everyone answer. So who is your question to? What is your question?
My question is to the DA in the Western Cape. As an ECD sector, I think what happened is there was a huge mistake of moving this ECD sector from the social development to basic education. I think that was a big mistake, but that's a talk for another day. The question that I have through DA, currently, the registration is a problem. We all know that, and you are sugarcoating that with the city of Cape Town, who is coming with DC charges that we cannot afford. You earlier on said you were talking about ECD feeding. I've been running an ECD for more than 20 years and I've never heard about it. So I don't know what you're talking about. You previously said you cannot feed a hungry child. And currently, even if I do have 100 kids in my ECD center, when you decide not to fund me, You do not, and you come up with 125 excuses.
Ma'am, I'm going to have to leave it there. Gillian, what is your response to what you have heard so far? My apologies, ma'am. We are running very, very short of time. Your response, Gillian.
In short, Lester, I spoke earlier about the ECD task team that the Center for Early Childhood Education is part of. And ma'am, I'd be very happy after this to provide you with my contact details to ensure that you are fed that information.
Continue, Gillian.
Because one of the most important aspects that task team is looking at, and as we know what happens is, the DA in the Western Cape sets the tone and everybody else follows. We have made processes available to make the registration for early childhood development centers easier in terms of land use planning. We've got the ECD task team that is being chaired by the Deputy Mayor, who's also responsible for spatial planning. So what that task team is looking at is, how are you streamlining the registration process? Because one of the biggest problems in the ECD sector is there are too many referees and too many systems for ECD practitioners and for people to jump through to register in ECD. What we're looking at is reducing the red tape and streamlining that process and putting a policy in place at a local government level, a policy of council that looks at how each government department at local government level, specifically in the city of Cape Town, where the majority of the 4,500 ECDs are registered, can follow, and it's an outlined standard operating procedure so that everybody knows what the rules of engagement are and the departments are able to do their job.
Thank you very much. Sir, on my right-hand side.
Is it
Your
Molweni?
targeted question, please.
Cool, thanks Musi, thanks Program Director. So I'm going to vote this year, but I don't know for who. I'm going to vote in hope. I'm going to vote for change and promises that you guys are going to actually follow through with some actions. I mean, if I could vote for these ladies here that are principals, they don't promise to be principals in the morning and then decide not to. They wake up and go educate. If you could learn a little lesson from them. But I come from a non-profit organization where we build safe infrastructure. For 31 years, we've been building classrooms, kitchens, and libraries all over the country. So my question is the red tape. Musi, you mentioned earlier about the regulations and tried to get to registration. We now are stopped. We're not allowed to build classrooms because it's land or it's because the toilet doesn't suit enough children. But we want to change the shack into a classroom. How do we do that without this red tape? Don't you get us on board? Pull us into the rooms. And my other question is, 17 Rand a child. I mean, come on. What are you going to do to... I understand that we need to be realistic. What is the realistic answer to moving that up to 20 Rand, to 25 Rand? Thank you. Yeah, here's my card if you guys want to help with some action. We can help you build.
Yeah, and that's why we call ourselves Build once. Anyways, but here's what I'd like to propose as a way we can get around some of the burdensome regulatory issues that we face. Like I highlighted that local government is in crisis, but here's a proposal, and this was piloted quite effectively in the US through a program called Head Start, actually. And one of the ways we can do it is, I wonder, and I'd like to pilot this with some of the teachers here, what if we could give parents vouchers of an amount that they could use to spend at an ECD center, and part of that voucher we could use the SKU to fund a program of building. Because I tell you what you then do in that instance, you cut out the middleman that is government, you empower parents with choice, and you let the practitioner be able to contract you so that we don't have this onerous rigmarole of having to find tenders, contractors, etc. Let's give the parents the right to choose with a voucher and let the money come directly so that we can build the appropriate infrastructure.
So on my left-hand side, your targeted question, and to whom?
Thanks very much. I'm just very despondent. I've heard so much politics, and I applaud the people in Orange who are providing those services on a daily basis. But I haven't heard any of the parties say, this is how much we're going to spend, this is how we're going to spend it, this is what we're going to be spending it on. And I'm just worried that we're looking for another 5 years, wasted years, another lost generation, and a lot of politics. And what I would ask is for Center for Early Childhood Development that I have a huge respect for, and I think Eric knows that I've gone to Parliament before as an individual activist and pleaded for this. Please make sure that early childhood development doesn't have to fall into a nappy protest to get heard, like NSFAS. So can Center for Early Childhood Development get each of these political parties to set out in detail how they're going to move from vague manifesto promises to action, and how much it's going to cost, and how much is going to be spent on hardware, buildings, how much is going to be spent on software, teaching tools, and how much on the most important, which is the warmware. Because give me a motivated teacher under a tree, and I'm not suggesting that's what we should be aspiring for, they will outperform any person given all the Montessori's resources.
Sir, can I ask you that you direct a question to one of our panelists here, please? At least one political party, please. Who would you like to know that answer from?
Well, I would ideally like it from all.
Unfortunately, we do not have time for all, sir, but who would you direct it to?
Well, maybe because Musi's had education as a cornerstone. Can you respond?
Guy, thanks for that question. What's absolutely crucial to recognize is that unless we build capability in government, we'll never be able to achieve anything. So my first starting point is that I want to appoint the best people to work for the state. Because if we don't do that, you end up with additional expenses of wastage that come into the system. To your question, I'd like to be bold enough, and I know it may not be the most ideal number, but I'm really keen to move that fee to get to about 150 Rand per day per child that we allocate, because that already takes it a tenfold from where it currently sits, and we move the ECD budget from 2 billion rands, which is what it's allocated to, so that it starts to mirror what it would look like at higher education, because we have to increase the number of children that participate. And lastly, like I did indicate, the fact that part of the mix of the funding mechanism is about allocating vouchering, is so that you give the parents the right to choose for themselves which the best centers are, which will up the competitive nature of each of the ECD centers that we put on the table. Thank you very much.
You the fears that they have for the future. We're sitting with a lot of political parties is just playing politics. My question is this: how can you pay an inmate 400 Rand a day for a meal and you expect an innocent child to give them 17 Rand a day? How are you going to fix that?
I'll have Cameron answer that first.
No, thanks very much for the question. We were asked that question earlier, and I don't want to stand in front of you and lie. What the commitment is and the agreement is that 17 Rand in terms of that subsidy is inadequate. That's why we have to look at the social security net, and that's why for us it's very important that workers are at least paid a minimum wage, that we move towards a basic income grant for every person so that you can
certain ECD consultation, and we are given very little time, Mr. Kiewit, which is very unfair, because this is our day. This is our day. Thank you, comrade. What I would like to say is,
How are you going to ensure that our trust is instilled again within the ANC? How can we trust you when you have disappointed us over the years?
Thank you very much, ma'am. Cameron?
Thank you very much. I just want to indicate to the comrade that we've come here to talk about ECD. We know where we started. We know where we are now. It's under education, the subsidy is too little, and we need to get to quality. So the fact is the ANC is pushing at least a start to say that grade R is going to be compulsory. So how can you trust, firstly, other parties who don't even want to support a bill which will make grade R, which I would argue is an important part, compulsory? Number two, you must never forget that when we governed the Western Cape, because this provincial government and the city of Cape Town have not been governed by the ANC for 15 years. The trouble that most and many ECD facilities are having with registration is actually with the city government, who in terms of the constitution are responsible. NGOs are going to play an absolutely critical role. The Department of Social Development in this province, we know, funds selectively. They fund people who are sympathetic to the DA and not others. Therefore, the best way to get the trust back is to vote out the DA so that the ANC can govern the Western Cape
Cameron,
again.
Doug Moore. Ma'am, on my right, your short, sharp, and direct question, please.
Body here. I'm from a social development background, and I just want to say I'm very disappointed that this is an early childhood development meeting, and yet we don't consider the holistic development of a child. Our teenagers are currently faced with mental issues, both in primary school and high school, and it all starts with early childhood development. Yet we are only speaking about the nutrition of the body. We're not speaking about the nutrition of the mind or the soul. And having said that, I would like to know from the ANC and the DA if they have done their independent research with psychologists, good psychologists across the world, and social workers to find out if UNESCO and UN comprehensive sexuality education that's being rolled out across the world and being funded by them, if they have done their research to find out that much of the so-called research that UNESCO and UN is mentioning is in fact not true.
Ma'am, your question, please.
So my first question is, what funding has the ANC and the DA received from UNESCO to roll out this comprehensive sexuality education, which is actually an attack? It's an attack on our children and on their natural development, and it ignores the well-documented stages of development of a human being.
Cut you short there, Cameron Douglas. Just for parity and fairness, for parties who have not been asked direct questions, I will allow those parties, the EFF, MK, Freedom Front, Rise Mzansi, and ACDP, to make a closing remark. Musi, Cameron, and Gillian, you have had questions directly posed to you, so we'll have only closing remarks from the EFF, MK, the Freedom Front, Rise.
Sorry, can I just add the last part?
Very quickly, ma'am, 5 seconds, please.
I just want to know why we as Africans are adopting these first world values.
Thank you. I think she's trying to also about the Africanization of education in South Africa. Cameron, Gillian, very quickly.
I want to respond by saying there's a huge opportunity now, ma'am, in terms of finalizing the curriculum for early childhood development, because the curriculum for early childhood development is work in progress and has not been finalized. And in regard to that, the Department of Basic Education has embarked on a process to actually look at that curriculum. So I cannot tell you to what extent the government has got money from UNESCO and so on. I think the reality is, like our government has a record of, before anything is finalized, there will be consultation and input into the curriculum. And I agree with you 100%. We should be informed by our continent, where we are. And I would urge, and that's I urge the whole ECD sector, people have struggled to get where we are. We haven't fixed ECD, but it's through partnerships with organizations that are here today that we can actually take this journey to quality ECD. On the issue of curriculum, on the issue of training of our teachers, on the issue of the subsidy, those are issues that the ANC government will continue to engage
That's all
on.
we have time for. Gillian, as brief as possible. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have for questions. Unfortunately, I've been instructed that 5:30 is our hard cut down, unfortunately. Gillian, your response after that closing remarks by ACDP Rise, Freedom from MK and EFF, please. Gillian?
Our promises to young people, Lester, are centered around providing quality early childhood development and promoting early learning opportunities that creates a supportive environment for young people that not only develops their cognitive ability, but builds their families and provides an opportunity for young people to excel, because we believe that young children don't exist outside of their communities. I'm not aware of any funding that the Western Cape government receives from UNESCO for specific programs. I know that the National Department of Basic Education has bilateral programs.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Gillian. Would you please give all our panelists and political parties the respect and your ear? ACDP Marie Sukas.
I want to agree with the lady who just spoke. And
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask for the respect for all our political parties represented? Understand, ma'am? We need respect for all our political parties represented here, all an equal chance to put forward their policies. Ma'am, I'd appreciate. Marie, I'm going to have to press you if you can. If you are able to speak, I'm going to ask you, what's your closing remarks, Marie?
I want to agree with the lady that just spoke, and the only way that we respond to the challenges within the ECD sector is to put the ECD in charge, to have the practitioners that are standing here now be part of the Children's Amendment Bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to call on, and I will give the remaining political parties a time to respond, the equal time, but I will call on Professor Eric Atmore to give us some remarks, and in the interest of fairness, I will have parties respond. Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Eric Atmore is the director of the Center for Early Childhood Development. Professor?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Could we have some order, please? The Professor Eric Atmore would like to address this gathering.
Good afternoon, everybody. We've run out of time, but I promise that within 2 weeks, we will organize another event for the ECD workers and teachers to speak. We undertake now to organize another event to invite the political parties back to hear the ECD workers and the ECD workforce air their grievances, because it hasn't been covered today. And we have run out of time. The buses are leaving at 5:30, but the promise is we will reconvene in this hall if we can, and we'll then question the political parties about their ECD intentions. I want to thank the political parties in alphabetical order: the ACDP, Action SA, the ANC, BOSA, the DA, EFF, Freedom Front, MK Party, and Rise Mzansi. Thank you very much for being here. It's tough. We live in a very tough environment, and collectively we've equipped ourselves very well. I want to thank my colleagues who organized the event, Yusra Ehrenreich. Well done, Yusra. And also those 2 children that were here. That's why we do the work we do. So thank you to those 2 children. We want to thank the College of Cape Town who gave us this venue at no cost, particularly Medley Mareskia. We want to thank our transport providers and Shod's Event who did all the sound. I want to thank South Africa's premier talk show host, Mr. Lester Kiewit, who pulled it all together. Lester is a media treasurer, and please listen to him on Cape Talk. He'll keep you informed, and he's a child activist in his own right. I want to thank all the ECD forums, Theodora Latuli, who brought hundreds of people here. Remember, the 29th of May is election day. Let's make it peaceful, let's make it harmonious, and whichever party you vote for, remember we are Africans and South Africans first of all. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is our debate. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a safe drive home.